The moon was hidden behind dark clouds, and the forest was silent, as though it were holding its breath. Amina's heart raced as she held the glowing stone, her only light in the suffocating darkness. The trees loomed around her, their twisted branches reaching like fingers, and somewhere far ahead, she could hear something, or someone, moving in the shadows. Was it the spirit they had come to find, or was it something else? She didn't know, but she had no choice but to keep going. The village of Akamfo had always been a place of peace. Nestled in the valley between two great hills and surrounded by dense forest, it thrived under the care of Sika, the guardian spirit of the sacred forest. Sika was not just a protector, she was a symbol of the deep connection between the village and the land. Crops grew in abundance, animals flourished, and the river that flowed from the heart of the forest was always full. But now, the forest was silent. The crops had wilted, the river was nothing but a trickle, and the villagers murmured in fear. Amina, the eldest of the children, had noticed the change first. She had seen the trees grow thinner, the grass turning brittle beneath her feet. Her father, one of the village elders, had stopped talking about Sika altogether. The village had begun to whisper rumors that the spirit had abandoned them, or worse, been stolen by some dark force. "I can't sit here waiting for disaster," Amina said one evening as she sat by the fire with her friends. "We have to do something. We need to find Sika." Kwame, her childhood friend and the bravest among them, stood up. "I agree," he said. "If Sika is lost, then the forest is lost. But we can find her, Amina. Together, we'll go into the forest and bring her back." Zoe, the quiet one with a deep connection to the land, lowered her head. "I don't know. The forest is changing. It feels wrong. Something is watching us, and I don't think it's Sika." "I'll go," said Kofi, always eager to join in adventures, even when the situation seemed impossible. "I'm not afraid of any spirit or beast." Amina smiled at her friends, feeling the weight of her decision. "Then we go tomorrow," she said. "The elders can't stop us. If we don't act, this village will lose everything." That night, the air outside was thick with tension. The full moon had not risen for days, and a strange unease settled over the village. The elders gathered at the temple, performing rituals to appease the spirits, but their rituals had failed. No one could explain why the forest had turned so still, and no one could offer any hope. As Amina lay in bed that night, she could hear the whispers of the wind through the cracks in the wooden walls. It sounded almost like a voice, low, distant, and full of sorrow. She shivered. The children stood at the edge of the village early the next morning, ready for their journey. Amina, Kwame, Zoe, and Kofi each wore a bag with dried food, water, and small offerings for the spirit, stones, herbs, and a few beads. "I lead the way," Kwame declared, stepping forward. "I know the forest better than anyone." Zoe frowned. "We should stick to the path. The forest is changing, and if we wander too far, we have to trust the forest." "Zoe," Kofi interrupted, his usual carefree tone now tinged with seriousness. "The forest has always been our friend. It's just lost its way, like us." Amina nodded in agreement. She felt a strange sense of foreboding in the pit of her stomach, but she pushed it aside. They had no choice now but to go forward. The air grew thick as they stepped deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to close in around them, casting long shadows that twisted unnaturally. The light dimmed with each step they took, and the sounds of the forest, once vibrant with life, had fallen silent. The only noise was the crunching of leaves underfoot and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. After an hour of walking, they reached the first marker, a large boulder shaped like a reclining lion. This was the boundary that separated the village from the sacred heart of the forest. No one was allowed past this point unless they had the spirit's blessing. Kwame stopped and turned to face the others. "Here we go. This is where the magic begins. Stick close." As they moved forward, the feeling of being watched intensified. Zoe kept glancing over her shoulder, her senses heightened. "I don't like this," she whispered. Keep moving, Amina urged. We're not turning back now. The further they went, the more the forest seemed to warp around them. Trees stretched taller, and the air grew colder. There was a strange energy in the air, like an unseen force was pulling them deeper into the heart of the forest. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. It wasn't an earthquake, just a low, vibrating hum that came from deep within the earth. The children froze. What was that? Kofi whispered, his voice tense. Before anyone could answer, the forest erupted into a cacophony of strange sounds, growls, howls, and rustling. The trees themselves seemed to shudder. It's them, Zay muttered, her voice tight with fear. The forest, it's angry. Amina felt a chill crawl up her spine. Stay close, she commanded. As they moved forward, the trees seemed to lean in, their branches reaching out like fingers trying to touch them. The air grew thick and damp, and the scent of decay filled their nostrils. By dusk, they found themselves in a clearing, a small, forgotten part of the forest where the trees opened up to reveal an ancient oak. Its bark was twisted, and its roots sprawled across the ground like serpents. A faint glow emanated from the trunk, casting an eerie light across the clearing. It's her, Kwame whispered, awe and fear in his voice. Amina stepped forward cautiously, feeling the weight of her decision pressing down on her. Spirit of the forest, she called, her voice trembling, we come to ask for your help. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, from the shadows, the figure of Sika appeared. She was beautiful but haunting, her body made of shimmering light and ethereal energy. Her hair flowed like silver, and her eyes glowed with the pale light of the moon. But there was something wrong, her form flickered like a flame on the verge of going out. Sika, Amina whispered, stepping closer. What has happened to you? The forest is dying. Sika's voice was soft and sorrowful, like the wind through dry leaves. The balance has been broken. The children stood in stunned silence. What do you mean? Kwame asked. Who has done this to you? I was forced to leave, Sika replied, her voice shaking. The land no longer listens to me. The trees fall, the animals flee. Something dark has taken hold of the forest, and I cannot protect it alone anymore. Zay stepped forward, a shiver running down her spine. Can we help you? What do we need to do? You must go deeper, Sika said, her form flickering even more. The heart of the forest is dying. There, you will find what has been lost. But be warned, many dangers lie ahead. The forest is no longer just the home of spirits, it is a battleground. With that, Sika vanished into the shadows, leaving the children in stunned silence. The forest grew darker as night fell, the silence broken only by the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. The children stood in the clearing, unsure of where to go next. We have to find the heart of the forest, Amina said, her voice filled with resolve. But we have no idea where it is. Kwame took a deep breath and scanned the surroundings. We'll follow the stars, he said. The ancients say that the heart lies where the stars guide you. As they began their journey once again, a low growl echoed through the trees. Suddenly, a massive, shadowy figure leaped from the underbrush. The creature, a monstrous blend of bear and lion, with glowing eyes and sharp claws, snarled and charged at them. Amina gasped. Run, she shouted. The children scattered in all directions. Kwame dashed to the left, Kofi ran straight ahead, and Zari darted to the right. Amina stood frozen for a moment, watching as the beast bore down on her. She raced. Her hands instinctively holding up the glowing stone Sika had given them earlier. To her surprise, the stone flared to life in her hands, its light blinding. The beast hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing in confusion. It growled but did not advance. With a swift movement, Amina hurled the stone toward the creature. It landed just in front of the beast, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. The stone paused, and the ground shook. The beast recoiled, letting out a final, blood-curdling growl before retreating back into the darkness. The children rushed to Amina's side. "You did it," Kofi exclaimed. Amina, breathing heavily, nodded. "That was too close." "Whatever that was," Zay said, trembling, "it's just the beginning." The children pressed on into the heart of the forest, determined but fearful. Their path was dark, and every step seemed to echo through the empty woods. The air grew thick with tension as they neared the center of the forest. As they entered a small clearing, they stopped in awe. The heart of the forest, a giant, ancient tree, loomed before them. Its massive trunk twisted like a spiral staircase, and its roots extended far into the ground, pulsing with life. But something was wrong. The tree was dying, its bark cracked and its leaves withered. "This is it," Amina whispered, her voice full of awe. "This is where Sika said we would find the truth." The ground trembled again, but this time, it wasn't just the forest shaking. Something, or someone was approaching. Out of the shadows stepped a dark, shadowy figure, tall, gaunt, and with glowing red eyes. Its presence filled the clearing with an oppressive weight. It was not a creature of the forest. It was something older, something darker. "You should not have come," the figure hissed. "This forest belongs to me now." The stage is now set for the children to face their greatest challenge yet. They must fight the darkness that has corrupted the forest and bring balance back to the sacred land. The shadowy figure stood tall, looming over the children, its glowing red eyes piercing the darkness. A cold, unnatural wind blew through the clearing, and the air seemed to vibrate with dark energy. The heart of the forest trembled beneath their feet, and the branches of the ancient tree above creaked ominously. "You should not have come," the dark figure hissed, its voice like a thousand whispers. "This forest is mine now." Amina stepped forward, clutching the glowing stone tightly in her hand. "Who are you?" she demanded. "What have you done to the forest?" "To Sika." The figure let out a low, mocking laugh. "I am the shadow of the forest past. The forgotten spirit that lived long before your precious Sika. You call me the Watcher, and I have waited for centuries, waiting for this moment. The balance was never meant to last. The forest was always mine to command." Kwame's hand instinctively went to the knife at his belt, but Zai stopped him with a soft, trembling hand on his arm. "No, Kwame. This is not a fight we can win with weapons. The power of the forest itself must protect us." The Watcher raised a long, skeletal hand, and the ground began to shake. "You think you can stop me?" it snarled. "You are nothing but children, lost and weak. The heart of the forest is dying, and so are you." Suddenly, the trees around them groaned, as though they, too, were feeling the pull of the Watcher's dark power. The roots of the heart of the forest began to writhe like serpents, reaching out to trap them. The children jumped back, narrowly avoiding the grasping roots. "We need to reach the heart," Amina cried. "It's the only way to stop him." But the Watcher wasn't going to let them pass. With a flick of his fingers, the ground before them erupted into a wall of thorns and twisted vines, blocking their path. "You're too late," the Watcher said, his voice full of twisted satisfaction. "The forest is already mine. And when it is consumed by darkness, so will your village. All you love will fall into the shadows." The children hesitated for a moment, fear tightening around their hearts. But then, Amina took a deep breath, standing tall. "We won't give up. The spirit of the forest is still here. Sika is still here. And we will not let you destroy everything we've worked for." Zoe, her voice strong despite the fear in her heart, added, "We're not just children. We are the forest children. And we will protect it." The Watcher snarled, and with another wave of his hand, the vines closed in faster, but it was then that the children heard it, a low hum, like the whisper of an ancient voice. Suddenly, the stone Amina had been holding flared brightly in her hand, brighter than it had ever glowed before. The hum grew louder, echoing through the clearing, until it was a deep, resonant sound that seemed to come from the heart of the forest itself. The vines faltered, the ground trembled, and the watcher's eyes widened in sudden confusion. "What is this?" the dark figure hissed. "What have you done?" The stone in Amina's hand was now glowing with a pure white light, and the light spread outward, surrounding the clearing like a wave. The trees creaked as if waking from a long slumber. The ancient oak at the center of the clearing, the heart of the forest, pulsed with energy. Its roots twisted and stretched, reaching deeper into the earth, drawing power from the land itself. "Look!" Kwame shouted. "It's working. Sika is returning." A figure materialized from the glowing light, a spirit of shimmering beauty and power. It was Sika, but her form was no longer weak and flickering. She was whole again, radiant and strong, her eyes shining like twin stars. "Children of the forest," Sika's voice echoed, warm and full of authority. "You have done it. You have restored the balance." The watcher recoiled as Sika's presence filled the clearing. The darkness that had once surrounded him now seemed to shrink back, as if afraid of her power. "You cannot defeat me, Sika," the watcher growled. "This forest is mine now. I was here before you. You were lost before me," Sika's voice was firm and commanding. "And you will be lost again." With that, Sika raised her hands, and the light from the heart of the forest intensified, pushing the watcher back with a powerful force. The trees around the clearing bent toward the light, and the ground itself seemed to rise up in defense of the spirit. The watcher fought against it, but his form began to crumble, pieces of his dark energy dissipating into the air. "No," he screamed. "This is mine. The forest belongs to me." But his cries were drowned out by the overwhelming light of the heart of the forest, and with a final, desperate howl, he was consumed by the forest's power, vanishing into nothingness. With the watcher gone, the dark clouds that had hung over the forest for so long began to lift. The trees straightened, their branches reaching toward the sky once more, and the wind began to stir, carrying with it the sweet scent of new growth. "The forest is free," Sika said, her voice now full of warmth and gratitude. She turned to the children, her form radiant with renewed power. "You have done what I could not. You have brought the forest back from the brink of destruction." Amina, still holding the glowing stone, looked around at her friends. "We didn't do it alone," she said softly. "We couldn't have done it without each other. Without the forest itself." Kwame smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "We are a team. And the forest is our home." Sika smiled. "And you will always have the forest's protection, as long as you remember what you've learned today. The balance between man and nature is delicate, and it is your responsibility to protect it." Zai nodded, her gaze filled with understanding. "We will never forget. The forest is part of us now." With a final, loving glance at the children, Sika began to fade, her form becoming one with the light of the heart of the forest. But before she disappeared completely, she spoke one last time. "Remember, children of the forest. When you protect the forest, you protect yourselves." The children made their way back to the village as the sun rose, the light of dawn painting the sky with hues of gold and pink. The forest, now fully restored, seemed to breathe with life again. Birds sang in the trees, and the air was fresh with the scent of new growth. As they emerged from the forest, the villagers rushed to greet them. The elders, who had feared the worst, now looked on in awe and gratitude. "You've done it," one of the elders exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The forest is alive again." Amina nodded, her heart full of pride. "We did it. But we couldn't have done it alone." The villagers gathered around the children, grateful and amazed. The crops would grow again, the river would fill, and peace would return to the village. The balance had been restored, and the forest would once again protect them. That evening, the village held a great feast in honor of the children and the spirit that had saved them all. The music and laughter filled the air, but in their hearts, the children knew that they had learned something far more important than any celebration, the sacred bond between the land, the forest, and the people. As the night drew to a close, Amina stood at the edge of the village, looking back at the forest. In the distance, the silhouette of the great oak, the heart of the forest, stood tall and proud. Thank you, Amina whispered softly to the forest. We will protect you, always. And as the wind gently rustled the leaves, she knew that the forest would always protect them in return. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell, so we can bring you more amazing stories.